Clearly the Brexit vote has shaken the ruling elites in the European Union and beyond, with the statements coming lately from Barack Obama. And what they're worried about is the possibility of destabilising a cosy consensus among the ruling elites on a global financial capital arrangement that they have, on a project, future projects that they hoped to create around battle groups and an EU-wide army that included the British, and indeed on the effect that this exit might have on the arrangements for TTIPs and other competitive and trading arrangements. They're worried about this. And I think that we have to say that the sentiment behind Brexit is definitely complex. Racism played its part, but so too did a sentiment that's part of a wider revolt against the European Union that I've just described, the European Union of war, of wealth, of power and of bully boys, economic bully boys, who've shaped Europe as a haven for the very, very wealthy at the expense of the people whose democratic wishes they choose to ignore. This is a slap in the face for Europe. It's a slap in the face for the Europe that forced Irish workers to bail out their bankers and bondholders, that forced the same bailout on the Greek workers, on the Spanish workers and on the Portuguese workers, and a Europe that cruelly, in particular, ignored the democratic wishes of the Greek people, Greece being the cradle of democracy, and indeed forced them to privatise some of their most precious assets, including their heritage. It's absolutely obscene what the European Union have done to the peoples of Europe. The racists and the far-right proponents like Farage and Boris Johnson have no place in shaping the future of Britain. In fact, their hateful rhetoric against migrants and refugees was largely unchallenged in the debate by both the Leave side and the Exit side, to their disgrace. And there has to be a lesson in that for the future of British politics and politics everywhere. But the vote to leave was also definitely one that was encased in Labour's stronghold, in areas that were decimated by the loss of coalfields and mining, by steelworks, by jobs, by the austerity that was imposed on successive Tory and Labour governments. And the future of Britain will be shaped, I believe, in the battle inside the Labour Party that's taken place today, tomorrow and the day after. And that's the battle for the leadership of either Jeremy Corbyn with a vision for change to redistribute wealth and get justice for the British people, or the warmongering racism and austerity of his opponent Angela Eagle. That's a very important battle between right and left in the Labour Party, and should Corbyn win, it will blow open the future for British politics. So I want to say solidarity today to Jeremy Corbyn from the left in the Irish Parliament. We hope he stays in for the long haul and wins this battle despite the haranguing and the harassment of the right. And for the future of those who chose to stay, those in Scotland and Northern Ireland, let me just put the record straight. People before profit absolutely respect their democratic right to have a poll on the future of their own countries, and we respect the right for the people of Northern Ireland to make that decision. We are for a border poll and are extremely disappointed in Sinn Féin's attack on people before profit, probably coming from the stated position of our allies in the Anti-Austerity Alliance. We have an honest disagreement with them on the question of the border, just as Sinn Féin have honest disagreements with each other on the question of the right to choose, or indeed have honest disagreement with their allies in the DUP on the question of Irish unity. And finally, the impact on us here, I think, has a lot to say about the question of the recent statement by the European Union on the derogation on water charges. The ink was hardly dry on the Brexit result when they were willing to come out and tell the Irish people, despite the demonstrations, the protests and the vote against water charges as reflected in this Parliament, that they have no derogation they're going to have to pay. So we need to stand and organise always against the racism and far right. That's the first most important lesson. And secondly, we have to continue the fight for democracy and against the European Union in this country. We might even see an air exit at some time. But I just want to finish by saying the startling hypocrisy of our own government, who eulogise the EU despite the savagery that is imposed on us, is absolutely breathtaking, as Richard Boyd Barrett might say. And one of the things I have to point to is the announcement by Brian Hayes, that should they go after the 12.5% tax, we're out. But it's okay to go after the lone parents, it's okay to go after the teachers, the nurses, to impose stealth taxes, to create a housing crisis and a trolley crisis, but don't you dare touch our corporate tax. Absolute hypocrisy. The response from the European Union, having separate meetings and creating a sort of up yours to the British and the democratic will of the people, is astounding. And finally, just to say, that government sitting across me there are behaving disgracefully. We have spent almost £500,000 defending Apple, who owe us £19 billion, defending Apple in the European courts. Disgrace and shame on you. We want that money back from Apple, not to defend them.
Thanks, Deputy.